What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 20 of the Back of the Pack podcast here on Fantasy Focus, brought to you by the Original Hooters. Ryan Levy here with my boy Alex Freeman. Post Darlington, exciting race, man. You came out to the YouTube world pretty hot, man. It's gonna be hard to top that. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have a little bit more racing here in our future. The Xfinity race is delayed at the moment, but looking back at the weekend, yeah, a lot of those picks hit. It was exciting to really see all this happen and culminate and come together, right? With Harvick leading the pack, Bowman having a very strong day, the Busch brothers, while Kurt finished very well, our projection of Kyle not doing very well also hit. So a number of our more or less picks were winners.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, I had most of my Monkey Knife Fight stack on the 12X buy-in. I was really going for the home run, and I don't recall who we screwed up on that, but I think that was the only thing you got wrong.
It was Keselowski, and that was the one that we talked about hedging our bets with the head-to-head. So in Ryan's 12X, where you have to get 5 drivers more or less correct. Yours was Keselowski. I think he was more or less at 17 and a half. And what happened is, much like we discussed, he was a leader at the front at the start of the race. He was someone who was at the front of the pack. He had great equipment, and he may not have been as challenged to think to himself, what do I need to do to make my car better? And as the race went on towards the end of the race, he fell the most out of any top driver in that last segment. And within 5 laps to go, he went from having 18, 19 points down to 16 and 15 because of that loss of position. So it's, again, some strategy you have to consider when we're playing Monkey Knife Fight, when the scoring's a bit different than the other platforms.
Yeah, that's a interesting thing to think about. I'm still learning NASCAR in general, and I'm also learning Monkey Knife Fight for that matter. So in terms of the strategy, it's been interesting to think about. I'm excited to see. Hopefully the weather holds off so we can get this race in on Wednesday night. But I am excited to see how that unfolds. Now, if you were watching live on Sunday morning, someone asked in the comments who was going to win the race, and you did say Harvick.
Oh, I said Harvick every single time anyone asked that question. I would have taken him at 20 points more or less. Like Harvick, it was his race to win. I think Harvick's going to go on a hot streak here. I don't think he's going to win tomorrow. I think he's going to win in Atlanta in a couple weeks, and I think that he's going to continue, like I said, his hot streak, and the Ford machines as well will follow suit.
So in terms of your strategy and your confidence level in him headed into the race on Sunday, like what was it that you were so high on, and why Atlanta, for example?
Harvick, I have a gut feeling sometimes with Harvick, knowing his ability to battle adversity, his ability to, again, wheel a car at this racetrack, how strong his average finishes are across all these different iterations of vehicle, from every generation that he has put rubber on the road there at Darlington, he has showed success. And that was something that I put as much stock in as anything else when looking at this race, because we had 70 odd days with no racing action. Yeah, there's iRacing, there's simulation. They can keep themselves fit and in shape. But when it comes to racing and taking the checkered flag, I thought Harvick just had that consistency across all these different machines to be able to transfer his knowledge to whatever car you put him in at that racetrack specifically.
I love it, man. It's too bad, we weren't sitting in Vegas when you had that confidence or something, because if we would have just put like $100 on him, to win straight up, if anyone out there was listening, because I know there were some people commenting that were asking about it, who we thought were going to win in top 3s and top 10s and this and that. Hopefully you listened and put some money on Harvick to win, because you did all right for yourself. That's for sure.
Yeah. And the other big pick too was Tyler Reddick. When we were going into it, we were saying top 10 for Reddick all day, every day. He is someone who rides rims around that track and is a hard-nosed driver. He comes out with a top 10. And I think those odds at a top 10 were like 195 or 210, something decent for a top 10 finish. So another good bet, another good pick for all those viewers out there.
Yeah. So you already said you don't think Harvick's going to go back to back here. I know you have your reasons for that, but is a big part of it due to the format here, where if you're new to racing, right? for this specific scenario, they're going with the inverted standings 1 through 20. So Harvick, being that he finished in first place, will be starting in the 20th position, correct?
You got it. So it's unique. It's something new in NASCAR, of course, because of the adjustments made with Corona. What's notable out of that is while Harvick is starting 20th, he still retains first pick on pit road. So for all you guys and gals out there that were watching on Sunday when they gave you the panoramic down pit road and Harvick was let off the jacks and he had a 4 or 5 or 6 car length lead from any other around him, that was because of the advantage created by that first pit stall pick. So I expect that to still be a huge advantage to Harvick, especially early in the race when they're able to make up a lot more time. But I don't think that he's gonna take the W. I have just a knack for Truex. He got into a little bit of early issues, dusted up his nose a bit. He had some cosmetic damage that definitely impacts the handling of vehicles, especially at a Darlington where everything is so sensitive. So I look for someone like a Truex to continue to keep it clean. Again, everyone is going to be a little bit more settled into their seat, not as much jostling for position out of the gate, I don't believe, but it'll be good to see Truex, I think, achieve with his momentum that he had going into the race.
Okay, yeah, I did. I just went into VegasInsider.com real quick because I was curious to see what the odds are on Wednesday night here coming up on the 20th. So Harvick is still the favorite, believe it or not, at plus 350. Then it goes down to Kyle Busch at plus 700, Keselowski at plus 750. My boy Denny at plus 800, and then Truex Jr. at plus 850. So if you're feeling frisky and you want to throw something out there, Truex at plus 850 is obviously a good ROI if you're throwing down $20 or something like that.
And I like Keselowski too. So going into the race, I saw Keselowski and Harvick on an even playing field as far as ability to achieve. But as we discussed, the reason that I was a little bit more confident about Harvick is because of his long-standing success at the track and keeping up with it, right? If you look at the stage finishes, Harvick was finishing in the top 5 in every race, but in every stage, but he wasn't the leader. So he knew what he had to do to keep up with the others around him and make the adjustments to make the advancements. What happens with these drivers who get comfortable, but they feel like they're leading, they don't want to quote unquote keep up with the track is a technical term, they start falling behind. So again, I think someone like a Keselowski will learn from that this past weekend and could also deliver some good value on a win or in some of these Monkey Knife Fight matchups.
I like it, man. So our boy Roop there says, what's up from Twitch? We got someone joining us in from Twitch. Thanks for joining there, Roop.
What's up, Roop?
What else did you see, from the first race back? We predicted kind of a messy race, I guess you could say. There were some accidents for sure, several caution flags, but what were your general thoughts on the race? Because I found it very entertaining. I watched the entire race. I haven't watched an entire race in a while. I
honestly, dude, I thought that not having fans wasn't going to be as big of an impact. It was weird seeing that race without fans, without the hustle and bustle of just people everywhere. Like the drone shots of the empty infield, it looked like a lost speedway that you could find on Junior's new Peacock TV show, where they go to these old historic tracks and literally show you where they used to be. Like it just looked dead. But nonetheless, it was great to have NASCAR back. I thought the racing was amazing. Darlington's a great track for on-track product, and we saw a lot of passing. We saw a lot of we saw pits. We saw crashes. We saw green flag action. While that track is traditionally challenging to make passes, I still thought we got a lot of action considering the situation.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it for sure. A couple other guys I want to ask you about before we get into the Monkey Knife Fight DFS picks for tomorrow, for Wednesday evening. If you're watching this Wednesday morning, it's obviously still on YouTube. But what about Denny Hamlin? Denny Hamlin, I thought, raced pretty well. He was up there in the top 10 pretty much for the entire race.
Yeah.
And headed into Wednesday, he is sitting at plus 800. So just below there. Truex and in between Keselowski and Truex in terms of favorites?
So Hamlin has another strong history at the track. He's won a couple of the Southern 500s, one of the big crowning jewels of the season, of the series. But if you look at Gibbs as a whole, they just didn't achieve. You look at the top three here in front of us. We have Harvick, Bowman, and Busch. Ford, Chevy. When we went into this, my expectation was I don't think Toyota has what they think they have right now. These teams are lagging behind, and it's clear that Fords and Chevys are really trailblazing. And it's odd to not see Toyota up in the front with the Truexes and the Kyle Busches. I think that it was a combination of issues with inspection for Busch. He started 40th. And then also with another top Toyota and Truex getting brushed up at the beginning. Those are kind of things that are going to happen. But as a whole, I think the whole Toyota group is lagging behind. Expect people like Hamlin, like Kyle Busch, and Truex to carry the flag for these teams moving forward. And it's interesting you mentioned Hamlin, because he's someone that I'm going to be hedging on Monkey Knife Fight this week at 16.5. He has the potential, a lot of upside, but he also has some potential to be downside. So like we did last weekend, Keselowski was my hedge on a couple of those 1-versus-1 matchups or 2v2 matchups. Hamlin's going to be the same for me in that case this weekend.
Got it. Before we get into it, not to get too deep in the weeds here, but what is it about the brand of the car that really attracts you? And is that based on per track? What is it? Like you're saying, okay, well, they're in a Ford, I don't expect much out of them. Why?
Yeah, it's momentum, much like a driver, much like a team having success, sharing knowledge. Toyota was the creme de la creme for a couple of years, and people think that's because they had a lot more R&D and preferential treatment in putting that product on the track. So Toyota is the newest manufacturer in the sport, and if you put two and two together and introducing something like that and giving them the opportunity to fine tune all the intricacies of these machines, some of these newer players on the playground, if you will, and manufacturers could someone's going to have an advantage, and people saw that being with Toyota from an aerodynamics perspective because their car makes are different, but also from a power perspective because their engines are different. So if last year one of the issues was Chevy that the nose of their car didn't align with other vehicles, so that was a disadvantage because of the make of the vehicle. So that what they have done to counteract that is Chevy has implemented a change in their body style, and instead of having that pointy nose on the Camaro, it's flatter. So the goal is for all these vehicles to be the same, to allow these different manufacturers to have this reach and this broad appeal. But again, there are inconsistencies, and it's impossible to have everything be exactly the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say, knowing NASCAR, how well I've come to know it, and how finicky they are with stuff like that. I'm actually surprised there's not like an exact specification where these cars have to be like identical that's shared across all manufacturers. You know,
and they're doing that more and more. So before me and you really before we even knew each other, before we were even in Chicago, there was a series called iRock. And iRock was a series of all these different drivers from all these different forms of racing who came together in exactly the same vehicles and would all race and compete against each other. So there are different iterations of that now and today on a much smaller scale, but it was cool to see the Dale Earnhardts of the world and the top drivers in rally and Formula One and all these different series come together and race on a common track. What you will see in the new car, next gen car that is released, probably going to be delayed, the template is going to continue to be more consistent across cars. So the goal for NASCAR is to create that consistency, to take away from that advantage, and look for them to continue to refine that.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective for sure, because I know, milliseconds obviously makes a difference. So it's interesting to dive into that and see where there might be a competitive advantage for sure. But shall we get into the Monkey Knife Fight DFS picks for this week?
Let's do it. Let's talk a little bit about it. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind when we're looking ahead. So if you were able to get any Xfinity bets in before they close on Monkey Knife Fight, if you put a bet in on the Xfinity race that happens tonight or Thursday, as well as a Cup race tomorrow or when it happens on Thursday, you'll get a $5 bonus for betting on both events. So keep that in mind. But a couple noteworthy things to remember: weather has a play here if tomorrow is canceled, as well as today's Xfinity Xfinity race. And by today, I mean Tuesday, tomorrow being Wednesday. Both series will race on Thursday. So what that means is the Xfinity series will race during the day, different track conditions than expected, but the Cup guys will still race at night. So keep that in mind moving forward here as the weather and elements get at play. But let's jump into some picks. So the first one up here, we have Harvick and Busch, right? What are their numbers?
Yeah, so let me break it down. If it's the first time you've ever been on Monkey Knife Fight, make sure you're using the code FOCUSED when you make your first deposit. And if you deposit 50, you'll get 50 back. So 100% deposit bonus there. We've also got the link in the video description. So check that out, follow that there. But in terms of fantasy points, if this is your first time playing, you're getting a 1/10 of a point for every lap led. And then you're getting 20 points for first place, 19 for second, third, 18, and so on down the line, all the way down to 1 point for 20th place. So you're going to have more or less than each driver has a fantasy number of points assigned to them. So to start off on a simple note here, basically, to get 3 times your buy-in, all you have to do is pick more or less correctly on both of these drivers. So the simplest contest is just 2 drivers and you get 3 extra money. Pretty solid deal. So put in 100, you're going to win 300. Can't beat it, right? All right. So unfortunately for me, I didn't follow all your, I went heavily on the 12X pick last week. So I pretty much goosed my account. So I'm going to take my $10 I have left in my account and put it on the 12X again. So you can bring me back to life until I have to deposit again on Sunday morning. But let's start out here. We've got Harvick versus Kyle Busch. Harvick is starting in the 20th spot, as we mentioned. Kyle Busch down there at 26. So for Harvick, it's set at 17.5 points.
Yep. So that was when we were analyzing things previously. Harvick was at a similar line, right? So we had 17.5. I was extremely confident in him overachieving that, even in the 18s and 19s. I'm still pretty confident in him being more than 17.5. Even though he's starting 20th, the scenario is a bit different. So some of these stats, and 80% of drivers starting in the top 10, 90% of winners starting in the top 15, like those are not as applicable considering the inversion. But there are some things that will come into play to impact his ability to score, one of which being ability to lead laps. Now, he's not going to have the chance to lead as many laps as he did in Sunday's race. So, consider that as a risk. But I believe 17.5 is an achievable number for Kevin Harvick. And again, with that number 1 pit stop, getting 2 to 3 positions every pit is extremely achievable. Watch him for a top 3 on Wednesday.
Let me ask you something real quick. With the pit position, is this how it's going to be in the inverted standings? Is that going to happen every week now in NASCAR because there's multiple races at each track? Is that why that is?
So it's going to happen until qualifying resumes. So until there is a little bit less risk in the mingling of teams and having them at the track for longer, it will be this way. So that's going to be effective for, of course, Sunday's race is impacting this race. And this race's results will also impact next week's race at Charlotte. And then the 4th race in this series will have scheduled qualifying for the Coke 600.
As of now.
For the moment, right? So that's all has a potential to change, right? So everything is always changing, kind of ebbing and flowing and rolling with the waves at the moment.
All right, cool. So if you're just joining us again, we just went over 17.5 on Kevin Harvick fantasy points for this week. What about Kyle Busch at 16.5?
I expect Kyle Busch to bounce back, even though he had a couple of bad breaks this weekend. He still continued to fight back. I know I texted the group and I was like, hey, Kyle, he's going down. That hit sin, and 15 laps later, he was making his climb. So, he has the ability to turn anything into a winning machine. I don't expect him to take a W, but I expect him to get a top 5 finish, to achieve more than 16.5 points, and potentially even get a stage win out of it.
All right. So we're going to go more
for both. Let's do it.
All right. I love it. Life's too short to, bet less.
Yes, sir.
All right. So rapid fire contest, again, 3x your buy-in. You need to correctly pick all 3 of these here, but in this sense, it's just basically who's having more or less fantasy points, and there is a spread involved, so it gets a lit'll bit interesting. How'd you do on these last week? Did you like the rapid fire format?
Yeah, I did okay. I hit 50 50% on the rapid fire. Again, Keselowski caught me, and then Bowman caught me as well. I talked up Bowman a lot on the Sunday show, but for some reason decided to go with Busch in a couple of those rapid fires. So that was something that was a mishap on my part, but I definitely had a little bit more success with the more and less, even up to 3 and 4 drivers. But looking at the rapid fire this week, out of the gate, we're going to get stuck with a strong one here between Harvick and Busch. Busch at 1.5. I mean, based on what we just talked about, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, 1.5 is a pretty solid amount of fantasy points if you're looking at the scale there. Again, if you didn't hear it earlier, I mean, you're only getting 1/10 of a point for leading a lap, right? And both these guys are starting in similar positions, so they're not in a position to pick up a lot of laps led in the beginning of the race, anyway, at least the early stages, yep. Right? So I would lean personally Kyle Busch plus 1.5 here. What do you think?
I'm pretty torn on this one. I'm gonna go with Harvick just because of the pit position. Again, with Busch finishing as he did this weekend, he's not going to have the best selection of pits, so he's going to be at a disadvantage compared to Harvick every time they come down pit road. So I think this will be a close one, but I expect Harvick to squeak out a win, even at a 1.5 point disadvantage.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. You probably just talked me into changing my pick.
This is my job. That's what I get paid the big bucks for.
All right. So Truex Jr. I know you're high on him. This is your early pick for the winner.
Yeah, Truex. Let's do it.
All right. There we go. Over Hamlin.
Over Hamlin. Again, I think Hamlin is going to have a good race. I think both of these guys will have a good race. But in the end, we're talking about who's going to win between the two. I'm confident that that Truex is going to walk away with a W. So I'm going to go with Truex and stand on this big old hill of mine.
I tell you what, man, they don't make this easy because this is tough, man. Elliott versus Bowman for the 3 of 3 here. Elliott is the slight underdog. He's starting in the 17 spot. Bowman at 19. Who you got?
Just based on how this weekend went, how strong of a showing Bowman had, and the consistent strength that he had, much like a Harvick, he was there at the front every stage. I'm going to go with the Bowman, but would not be surprised to see Chase Elliott even walk away with a top 3 finish. So this may be another one that I'm going to hedge. My initial bet will be heavier on Bowman, even with a half-point disadvantage. I see him leading a couple of laps, using that experience that he gained on Sunday to his advantage on how to push that car. And the biggest difference in these drivers, whoever's closest to the wall without hitting it is the fastest car, and that was Kevin Harvick this weekend. Mm-hmm. So I expect Bowman to leverage that experience, Kevin Harvick to leverage that experience, how to play with that cushion of air on the wall and push the limits for a top finish.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you're a big momentum guy too, so it's easier to if you're close or you're torn between two guys, go with the guy that's got more momentum. But you know, Hamlin and Elliott both raced well. Those are my guys. They
both raced really well, but in the end, we got to make a pick, and I'm going to go with Bowman. And we can't play nice and go halfsies. But and talking about momentum, Bowman is the ultimate momentum play right now. Not only does he have a top 2 finish, he just comes off of signing a 1-year extension with Hendrick after being with a back marker team for the most part of his career before joining Hendrick. So this gives him another level of confidence and clarity and understanding. He's not racing for his ride. His team has confidence in him. They're backing him. I think he is a very, very strong momentum play.
I love it. All right. So next one up is an easy rapid fire. It's just 2x. So you only got to get 2 out of 2 here. So again, we've got Harvick and Busch. Are you still going to take Harvick minus 1.5 in this format?
I
guess strategy wise, let's talk about that real quick before you answer. Are you going to do that on it? Like if you're gung ho on Harvick, right? And I know we don't think he's going to win in back-to-back races due to starting position and stuff like that, but are you really going to put all your eggs on the same side every time if you're playing all these contests, or are you just going to pick like, 1 or 2 that you're more comfortable with?
So my bigger plays are going to be the ones I'm most confident in. So for example, last week, my biggest play was a $20 play on the Harvick more or less with the Keselowski more or less. And what I did is I played Harvick more and Keselowski more, but it was a loss. I knew that was a risky pick. So to hedge that bet, I did a $10 bet on Harvick more, Keselowski less. So I came out in the green on both of those bets, or in the black rather, but I understood that risk going into it and played it accordingly. So this may be one of those where I'm going to play that strategy. Is I'm going to the picks I'm more confident in, that'll be my double bet. I'll put a $20 bill down on what I'm confident in, and I'll come back and make one small adjustment at a $5 or a $10 clip. So in looking at these numbers, I'm going to stick high on Harvick. I'm going to stick high on Truex. I would go less with Busch if I was going to hedge that bet, as we mentioned previously.
All right, I dig it, man. Spoken like I know you're not even a big gambler, so I'm loving this. But it's interesting to get the strategy from just a diehard NASCAR guy that's figuring out the system here now.
You're DFS. Turning me into one, man. It's your fault. So I'm really diving into it. I'm turning the understanding and the passion for it into some residual value. So it's exciting, and I'm really enjoying it, man.
There we go. You're going to build a following real quick here because people are going to be tuning in every week to get the fire DFS picks from Mr. Freeman. So
I'm about it.
I love it. All right, more or less here. I like this. This is less risk here to me because you only got to get 3 out of 4 correctly. To 2.5x your buy-in. That's pretty good return on investment. So we got Harvick at 17.5. So I assume you're going to stick with the over there.
Yep. I'm going to say I'm most confident in Harvick and Truex being more. So once I click these two as more, then my decision is which is a riskier play here. So gun to my head, I'm going to say with this particular situation, Busch is going to be more, and I'm going to pull Denny as a less in this matchup.
Okay.
And the reason that is, again, we're mixing more and less for Kyle Busch, but we have a little more flexibility on this one because we only need to match 3 of the 4 correct. So I feel confident in half of them, extremely confident in the Harvick and Truex, but again, the Hamlin and the Busch are my toss-ups that I have at the moment.
All right, cool. So let's get into the Mac Daddy here. This is my favorite. This is my favorite contest that they offer. I love this one.
All right, so I want you to pick your 3 you're most confident in.
3 that I'm most confident in. But I feel like I'm not very good at this because I have like these Chase Elliott Hooters glasses on that I'm always looking through.
Your Hooters orange glasses?
But he's not wearing the Hooters orange this week. So I feel like I can go against him, but you know what I mean? Like I'm a fanboy of Elliott and Hamlin. So like I always want to pick the over. I don't ever want to root for these guys to not do well. So like
I feel that.
It's not a smart decision. You know what I mean?
I hear it. Well, all right. So you get the fanboy with one of these guys. Are you going to fanboy with Hamlin or Elliott?
I'm going to go. I think Hamlin had a better race on Sunday. I know they were both pretty much neck and neck there, but I'm going to go with Hamlin. I feel like at one point I thought Hamlin was really going to pull it off on Sunday. So I'm going to take the more on Hamlin. I'll go less on Elliott. You were most confident in Truex for more because you
and Harvick
and Harvick. So
yeah,
we've kind of mixed it up with Busch.
Yep. And at first we went more and then we went less most recently. I think in this big boy one, Busch is here to play. We're going for 12 here. Let's go for more.
All right.
Busch doesn't have 2 bad races back to back. He's gonna claw one out in this situation, I hope, to get you a little bit of cash in your pockets.
This is a great example because I'm playing here with my last $10. So instead of spreading my bullets around, I am going to just fire it all in here and go for 12x my buy-in, so that I've got $120 to play with on Sunday.
Oh, just start counting your eggs, man.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're gonna definitely take the smarter approach, and you're gonna end up with $1,000 in your account by the end of next weekend. But
my play, and this is just based on some of my success. I like the 2x or 3x more or less multipliers, a little bit less to account for. But I did see Colville in the chat here. He wants to go fast. I want to go fast too, dude. I want to go fast tonight. I want to go fast tomorrow night. It's going to be some great racing. What's up, Colville?
What's up, buddy? It's good to see you. I like that strategy. I mean, what you're doing is obviously smarter. I'm just waiting to, I had to get through my bonus play there. So it was basically like I was
don't forget That's right. And if you're listening to, you can use code Focused and get a $50 match on your first Monkey Knife Fight deposit. So I made good use of that match this weekend. Came out in the black, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Any additional thoughts before we sign off here? We might be going live again before the race, but just wanted to give you some analysis and some picks ahead of time so you have time to get them in. Any additional thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, my thought would be, I think it's equally as important to think about some of the drivers that are not in the DFS lineups for Monkey Knife Fight, because these other drivers are going to be impacting the points in which your driver can achieve. So the drivers that we have here in front of us, again, not as many of them are starting in the top 10. So the likelihood of leading laps in that first segment is not as likely. So the multiple and the ability to score as many points as they did last weekend isn't as present. So look for someone like a Logano to lead that first series pretty heavily, because he's starting in the top few drivers. He has some of the stronger equipment, even though he didn't have the best finish last race. He's been showing success, and his team is strong. So it's not only about analyzing what your driver can do, but also analyzing the strength of the drivers not on the lineup who are impacting how many points your driver can achieve.
All right, I like that. That's a good perspective here, because there's people out here that haven't played on Monkey Knife Fight yet, and maybe they want to keep watching and get more comfortable with it, but they might be playing on DraftKings. So
right,
I haven't logged into my DraftKings account since December, and I just logged in here and I got $7. So
ooh,
I'm gonna put you to the test live on air here.
Let's do it.
We're going to enter a different type of DFS format. So this is my first, actually, no, I think you and I have played NASCAR on DraftKings last year.
Definitely.
But you've got a $50,000 salary here. And I believe you have to pick 6 drivers, or is it 7? Yeah, it's 6. So some of these guys that you're telling me about here that are less expensive, Logano, for example, is 9,400, where Busch is 12,000. Harvick is 11,600. Truex Jr. is 11,000. So I'm going to start with Truex Jr. because you are the most confident in him.
Yeah, and looking at that point breakdown too. Remember, based on my most recent knowledge of the platform, they give points for differential. Mm-hmm. So if Truex starts, 15th, 20th, whatever, if he finishes first, he has an additional points to receive from that difference. So there's a little bit more incentive to bet on some of those folks towards the back of the pack.
Okay. I like that. Before we continue on with building our lineup here, we got a question, or a comment, I should say, coming in from Twitch. Thanks for joining us, Dark Sage. He says, I think NASCAR did well in its return. As a fan who grew up my entire life with NASCAR, I dislike all these gimmicks NASCAR is trying to do, but I think yesterday went as well as I could have given the circumstances. I know you're a lifelong NASCAR fan as well, so give us your thoughts there, Alex.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, man. Like, it's as an original fan, as someone who loves NASCAR for what it is, seeing them change things up and try and attract new attention. At first, it kind of created a bit of pause for me, but as I've seen new individuals come and like the sport and gain exposure to it, I have been okay and accepted the change and been cool with it. You see the Barstool Sports, and you see the other organizations that are unconventional becoming partners with the sport. And while a lot of conventional down home fans may see that change as scary or bad or different, it's increasing the exposure of our sport. It's allowing us to achieve 6, 7, 8, 9 million views on a weekly basis. So to me, I've always said this: as long as the sport is changing, I think it's going to be, it's going to continue to grow. But when they stop changing and stop, being a true marketing machine like they are to get this product out to people, that's when we're going to be concerned. So for all those lifelong fans out there, I think it's take a step back, look at how these things are going to positively impact our sport in the short term and the long term, and think about how other sports have drawn your appeal. They've had a change to draw your attention and excitement. So NASCAR is no different.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective, because right here on this podcast, I was a novice fan just to to be generous. Alex got me more into NASCAR. So some of these gimmicky type things are somewhat appealing to me, especially like the fantasy stuff. I think that's where you're going to gain a lot more fans of the sport in general. Like I'm getting into it now. It's not just about the fantasy or the gambling. I'm curious to learn more about the cars and this and that. So I totally get what you're saying there, Dark Sage. This is another interesting point he brought up. We'll just get your thoughts on it real quick. He said, racing at Darlington 3 times in a year or Charlotte, for example, is going to value the events, in my opinion. I know they have the Southern 500 coming up in September, but with these 2 races coming up, I think it's a bit too much, in his opinion, at one track. And I think people are going to get a bit fatigued with the amount of races at Darlington. That's a good perspective, too. I didn't think about that.
Potentially. I think there's some fatigue elements here, but you got to remember, we've been out of racing for 70 some days, and there's no live sports. While fatigue is a real thing, if we were to do a Sunday, Monday, Friday race every single week with, in our regular schedule before COVID, that would be something that I would be scared about from a fatigue perspective. But I have had so much withdraw from NASCAR, I would be fine if they raced it again this weekend. So I understand where you're coming from, Dark Sage. I agree that there is some fatigue to this. The turnaround is very quick, but considering the situation and lack of live entertainment and sports action, I just like to be able to talk about it. I like that the news cycle is quick. New things are coming up. Sure. New things to talk about. We're not just stuck on Corona all day, every day. And there's new things happening, and that's what's exciting to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I think this is an absolutely huge opportunity for NASCAR to capitalize. I didn't even look at the TV numbers from Sunday. Did you catch those by chance?
Yeah, well, I think we were close to 7 million views, which if you compare it to other races, Daytona 500 this year, I think drew about 7.5 million views. So that's a huge race. It's a marquee race considering the situation, considering this race was just put on the schedule a couple of weeks ago. I think 7 million views is a very strong rating. And a lot of the viewers not only, were commenting about how they were enjoying the race, they were commenting about how they've watched NASCAR for the first time and can't wait to tune in again. So all that is good to hear. It's positive that the response is this strong and positive.
Yeah, love it, man. All right, so back to DraftKings real quick. We already did our Monkey Knife Fight pick. So if you're just joining us and you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, press the like button, all that good stuff. We're going to be coming out with a lot more NASCAR stuff for those of you that are fans. We also do football and pretty much every other sport. But I'm building my lineup around Truex Jr., 11,000, because that's your guy. That's your early sleeper to win the race. I believe he's at plus, I think I said it earlier, plus 850 to win the race. So if you want to throw down a little bet there and get lucky, that's our guy headed into the race. But who else should I build with here? Because he's pretty expensive. He's like, the 3rd most expensive driver on the board.
Yeah, so I think you're going to have to really look into your value picks for DFS on DraftKings. You need to find someone who is starting in the back, towards the back of the pack in the 20s or early 30s, who is going to be able to overachieve from their starting position and have consistent finishes. So I'm not sure how much a Jimmie Johnson is or a William Byron. I'm sure Byron's more expensive than Jimmie Johnson, but you have to look for some of these top tier teams that have drivers who don't have as much momentum, who may be seen as a value. But you're also going to have to make some very hard decisions on it. Do you want 2 front runners and 4 back markers, or do you want 1 front runner and 3 or 4 middle of the pack guys? So if you're going to be going with a Truex, I look for value in someone like a John Hunter Nemechek, someone who really overachieved this weekend. But you need to consider, again, he's starting up very, very high in the field. He has as equally of a chance to fall back and lose points on that start differential. So I think that drivers like Tyler Reddick present also more value than others. And the Joey Logano's, things like that. These guys that are going to be starting out of the up front, out of the gate, getting those points and counting them at the start is valuable. So look for someone in the top 5 who presents value on DFS, and go with them and hope they pull out some surprise points to start the race.
Okay. All right. So I've been building my lineup on the fly here just while you're spitting facts at me. So I've got Boyer at 7,300. I feel like that's a pretty good spot for him in terms of a price. Jimmie Johnson's only 9,100. Nemechek 6,200. Reddick 7,700, and Truex at 11,000 as my lead horse there. So basically, I've got 8,600 left now. I can either go with Eric Jones. I believe he's starting in the 13 spot. I can go with Blaney at 8,300. That's
I like Jones.
You like Jones? Okay, I know you're pretty
I
high
like the
on him
Jones
last
play.
week.
So we've talked about him over the past few days because he was an individual who won here a couple of years ago, and again, someone who knows his way around this track. So I think Jones is a good play, especially that 13 starting spot. He inverted. He's had top 10 finish this weekend, so look for him to achieve a top 10 finish as well again. I see Darks going back at it with some comments. Do you want to address them before we call it a day?
Yes. Let's see. Here we got. Oh yeah, I love it. I love the Twitch comments. Come on in, Twitch. We love you guys. He thinks it's a bit reckless to do more than one day for the Coke 600. NASCAR said all these races will be one-day events, like race and go home, with the exception of the Coke 600. And to me, that is a bit reckless, and it kind of feels like a bit of corporate greed. Thoughts?
And I can hear that. I can see that. At the same time, to play devil's advocate here, these teams are extremely close to that racetrack. So that track is a part of the All-Star weekend and the Coke 600 and back-to-back weekends for a reason. It's because that's like a staycation for these teams.
Sure.
So even if these teams are racing on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday in current COVID situation, they aren't going to have to stay at the track. They aren't going to have to stay in an unfamiliar place. They can go back home. And honestly, it's almost a cost-saving initiative for NASCAR because they don't have to stay up in hotels. They don't have to stay in the infield. It's a little bit easier for these teams to operate near their home base. And when you were talking in the next comment a little bit about these one and done events with the Coke 600, that's going to be the first race that has qualifying. So it's going to be a little bit more of an extended, competition. If you will, there's going to be more things to get to. They're not just going to jump in the cars and go. So, again, I completely understand that individuals may look at it as, hey, it's a corporate greed. We need to keep individuals safe. But at the same time, I think there are even considerations for extending this event beyond 1 or 2 days to allow these individuals to stay at home or to be with their family instead of away from home in the racetrack.
Yeah, I like it, man. I can see both sides of that for sure. So appreciate you guys jumping in the comments. It has been fun, Mr. Freeman. Sorry for throwing the curveball on the other DFS account there.
I was about it. Let's do it. I hope you win some money.
Yeah, I look forward to the race tomorrow. It's going to be fun. Hopefully the weather holds off. But this has been episode 20 of the Back of the Pack podcast here on Fantasy Focused. You can find Back of the Pack on Twitter, BackOTPack, and on Instagram, BackOTPack, and also Fantasy Focused spelt out. So give us a follow. Hope you guys are enjoying the content. And you can find, if you're joining us on video here, you can find the audio version on all podcast platforms as well. Appreciate the support, and we will see you guys this weekend.
Thanks, guys.